As a leader, do you wish that sometimes you come across as more authentic? It's really hard because sometimes messages are too casual, sometimes they're too corporate. There's a gap between who you are and how you want to be seen and what your team hears and sees. And today, we're going to close this gap with my guest, David Shelley. David's the CEO of one of the largest publishing houses in the world. He's real, he's raw, he's relatable, and he gives us a masterclass in authentic leadership communications at scale. You're the CEO of one of the largest publishing houses in the world, yet you work in a cubicle. You don't work in the corner office.
I want there to be transparency. I want there to be open communication. I think even if you're saying that, but shutting yourself off within an office, that's a sort of contradictory message. Yeah. In my mind anyway, kind of everything is best if it's congruent. So because I really want us to be a business where everyone feels comfortable being themselves, everyone feels included, I want us to be a fairly non-hierarchical company. It sort of felt vital to me that everyone is out and about. I also, on a personal level, I get energy from other people, and it really improves communication with the senior team. I mean, my assistant sits next to me, improves communication between us. I sit opposite the comms director. So, I mean, I've been open concept for a long time. I can't imagine now going back into an office ever.
Yet it's probably quite the departure from the usual CEO of publishing house, right?
To be fair, the industry's gone a lot more this way. More people are heading in this direction. I think that there's been valid criticism in the past of us being a sort of closed, elitist, traditional industry. I think across the industries, there's a lot of moves in place to be different, to be more open, to be more inclusive. And I think the way we sit, the way we are is all part of that. So much as I'd like to be, sort of unique, I'm not. Like, I think the whole industry is doing this more and more.
I love the sound of that because, I'm a book geek. I write books. I help people with their book projects. So I love to hear that the book industry is modernizing, moving in the right direction. And, you're proponent of open communication within the team and externally. What does that mean for you, open communication on a day-to-day basis?
We've got 4 business pillars, and one of them is growth mindset. And I'm sure you know all about the growth mindset. It's about learning from success and failure. And a key part of it is actually knowing when you've succeeded, when you've failed. And part of that is feedback and being open to feedback and being open sometimes to really challenging feedback. So for me, if I do one thing, I want it to be being open and for people to be able to really, really tell me their thoughts. Not that I'll always agree with them. Some feedback I won't think is valid, but some is very, very valuable indeed. And some of the most valuable feedback to me has been some of the most painful. So some of the tangible things I have, like these lunches every week here in New York with a different group of assistants from a different part of the company. I think we've seen now, so me, our HR director, comms director, we've maybe seen about 200 people, 250 people across the company in that way, having other sort of AMA sessions, encouraging people to email me. I often ask questions in emails that people can answer, which is quite a good way of sort of, tell me about when you exhibited growth mindset or whatever. Tell me about an achievement of yours that helped contribute to our business success. And kind of finding those moments for people to actually personally interact. I'm much more of a believer in that, I suppose, than I am we have pulse surveys, we have things like that, but I think often it's the more personal feedback that where people really take the trouble to be as full as possible and as honest as possible.
I agree. I'm a proponent of push-pull exchange and internal communication. So yes, you have to push out some information. Sometimes, sure, you want to pull it with things like pulse surveys, just doing the surveys, the data every year, every quarter if you have to. And then also the exchange, which is usually the formats you described, the coffee with the CEO, the lunches, skipping levels of hierarchy. The CEO meets with the assistants. I think that's brilliant. Do you have an example for us where someone provided feedback to you where you had to swallow and think, okay, tough to hear, but there's probably something to it?
Yeah, I think, lots of times actually. There was one, another of our pillars is changing the story, which is about making this diverse and inclusive environment and one that reflects, the wide readership we want to serve. So it's very important to me, something I've always sort of prided myself on, that we are that environment. And I can think of at least a couple of times when people have said to me very, very clearly, this is not a diverse and inclusive environment. This is not an environment where I felt comfortable. Here are some specific examples of things people did that made me feel uncomfortable. And that was incredibly painful feedback to hear, but it was true. And I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't deny it. And both of those occasions, I mean, there've been many other occasions where people have said similar things, but those are two occasions where I felt there are specific actions I need to take, difficult actions.
Yeah.
I need to say, in terms of personnel, and processes and systems to actually address what they said. So, I mean, that's one example, but countless. I would say almost every week I get some piece of difficult or challenging or painful feedback that makes me think in a different way.
But that shows you it's working, right? Because in some companies, you have the culture that, invites open feedback, but then no one dares to do it because they know that the reality and the words don't necessarily match up.
I have to constantly remind myself that kind of power is situational, and that people, as much as I keep saying I want honest feedback, because I'm the CEO, that will influence how people come back to me. So it's almost like I'm constantly trying to think, how can I make an extra effort or a different effort or solicit feedback in a different way, in a way that it really comes, because I get it. If someone's in a position of some sort of power or authority, that will sometimes make people afraid to give them honest feedback, or will make them sugarcoat it sometimes, or say what I want to hear or whatever. And also I think it's a really interesting question when you're a CEO, because you do become used to it. You do become used to people treating you a certain way, and you think it's the real world, and it's not the real world. So I have to kind of constantly try and find the ways to almost find that challenging, difficult feedback for people to tell me the things that
it is. I mean, exactly. It's the leadership amplification effect, right? So if you brush off criticism, that will be magnified. Oh, the boss doesn't want any feedback. Sure. And we don't. But if you invite it and then act upon it and people see things change, that is also magnified. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. And it's really hard. It's really hard. Sometimes I do feel very defensive, and I have to sort of almost bite down my initial impulse, which is to be defensive or to say, well, no, I think that's because of this reason or whatever. I just have to kind of be like, and then really go away with it and think about it and think, that what was it there? What was it there that has made that person feel that way?
You mentioned changing the story, which I believe is one of your core values. What does it mean for you and the business?
So to my mind, this is a kind of business imperative. So, go through we've got a mission, and we've got 4 core pillars or values. The mission is to make it easy for everyone to discover new worlds of learning, entertainment, ideas, and opportunity. That's our business mission. And changing this, and the 4 pillars feed that. Changing the story is basically saying we serve a very broad readership. So our books, I mean, the thing people outside publishing maybe don't know is how many copies of our books in the English language are selling around the world. So we're selling books not only in the US and the UK, but in every single country in the world as well.
How many do you sell? I've no idea.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, across both, hundreds of millions of books every year across
hundreds of millions
of books.
Okay.
So it's like 220 million. Wow. So serious quantity of books being sold every year. And we're selling them in ebook, audio, print, all formats, all countries, everywhere. So if you look at the makeup of the world, it's very, very diverse. America is very diverse. Kind of the UK is and I think book publishing, again, in the past has been guilty of being a certain subset of whatever you want to call it, kind of liberal, white metropolitan people. And for us to reach the maximum possible readership, to fulfill our mission in the best possible way, we need to be reaching all communities. To do that, we really kind of have to be representative ourselves of that world.
Yes.
And so changing the story is about that. It's about how do we not only publish in this really broad way, but how do we ensure at all levels of seniority that we are a really diverse crew. And as part of that, we measure our statistics sort of voluntarily.
Yeah.
We measure us in the US and the UK. We have a report every year. We measure those levels. We're definitely not where we want to be, where we need to be, particularly at more senior levels. But the data does show we're heading in the right direction.
I'm sure not every publishing house is looking at the growth rates you are. So how do you explain it? What do you think are the major factors accounting for this growth under your leadership?
I kind of bring everything to these values or these pillars. So I do think one very real factor is changing the story, is being more diverse and inclusive in our makeup, in what we publish, in our outlook. That has driven our success, undoubtedly. That is a really big factor. I mentioned growth mindset, number 2. I think that is really powerful for any business. I truly think we on our best days, we learn from our successes and failures. On our worst days, we don't. But I think that has driven quite a lot. I think there's a great team here. It's very analytical about, what could we have done better? Kind of how can we do things differently? So that's number 2 reason. Number 3 reason is our third pillar, which is owner mentality, which kind of broadly means treating the company's money like it was your own, making decisions you would make if you own the company. That's what I'm really proud of. I feel like, again, on our best days, I'd like to feel every member of the team, from someone on the warehouse floor to me, is trying to make the best decisions they can, trying to get the best value for the company. And then number 4 is understanding consumers. That's our 4th pillar. And that's really trying to, I think there's a tendency in our industry to look a lot at gatekeepers, to look a lot, what do the booksellers think? Or even like, to be anecdotal, what do my friends think? What do I, whatever. But I think a lot of our success is driven by, we've got a great consumer insights team looking at what are actual consumers interested in, what are people interested in who are not my friends or in my group or my family. I think too much in publishing in the past has been about my immediate circle. What is my echo chamber saying? But actually, there's a big world beyond that.
It's interesting about the consumer insights, right? Because you don't know, or do you know who your consumers are? Because in my mind, you're selling to booksellers and other channels, and then the consumer buys from them. And if I go to a bookshop, they also don't know who I am. So most sectors, you kind of know your customers are. You can run all this data. It's quite transparent. But it's a bigger challenge for you, isn't it?
You're completely right, because we are often selling through booksellers. We have a number of different data sources now. So there are some of our retailers who will supply us with information about customers, which to my mind is a win-win, because the more we know about them, the better we can serve them, the better those retailers can do so as well. So
makes sense.
Any retailers listening to this who don't share consumer data, I genuinely think it's a win-win, and we have great trading relationships with those retailers. So we get some from that. We also have a growing direct-to-consumer business. So we do particularly like special editions, signed editions, limited editions, and we know quite a lot from about that. We also do quite a lot of sort of qualitative research, so focus groups, opinion polls. We commission quite a lot of data in that way as well. So it's a mixture of things. We also, in the book trade, there's something called BookScan in the UK. And in the US, something Sakana in the US, and those give us the kind of numerical data. So there's a range of sources. I mean, there's also, I have to say, things like Google Analytics are really good. There's a lot of sort of open source data out there as well that helps you understand what people are interested in.
Yeah, TikTok probably. That's probably another channel the team has.
Absolutely,
The Book Talk. And it's an interesting pattern I see with businesses that are successful, that are growing. They really master the data, but they also master the storytelling. Is that changing the story? So you own your story, you're shaping the narrative. At the same time, you're really drilling down to understand changing consumer behaviors and getting data that previous generations of publishing houses or leaders of publishers didn't have. So that's quite impressive. Another factor I would say is trust, right? Because as you said, you need the whole team to move in the same direction, and everyone needs to be aligned and do a great job and treat, ownership, growth mindsets. These things don't come easily in a lot of organizations. So it requires trust built by leadership. What communications channels or formats do you use to build trust?
I'm sure we're not doing anything that other people aren't doing. We do also, we do emails to staff, we do videos, we do town halls, touch bases, at every level. I mean, one thing I feel very strongly is this sounds odd for a CEO. I don't feel I'm a very corporate person. I'm
Hmm.
very turned off by anything that reads to me like corporate jargon.
Yeah.
So as part of my own strategy, so I've been doing this for 8 years, I decided right at the start that I would write every single communication that I do. Um,
Nice.
and that is not because I'm the best writer or the best person to do it, but just because if I write it, then I know it will sound like me. And there's something, again, I think there's something that people pick up on in terms of tone. I think tonality is really important.
Yes.
And I hope in terms of building, this is again a hope. I hope in terms of building trust, the fact that people can hear that I've actually written it is actually what I think, and I try to be as truthful as possible and not just
Mhm.
spout bullshit. Like I hope that helps build trust rather than people reading something that is written by me, but is clearly,
Yeah.
a sort of.
Big corporate team / ChatGPT. Are you sick and tired of spending 8 hours preparing for a 1 hour presentation? You're not alone. That's why I created my tactical guide, 50 presentation hacks. It's for free. Grab it in the show notes. Let's unpack this because I think this is so important. You're right in the sense that other companies do emails, videos, internet, etc. So the channels are not the mystery. It's how you do it and how you use it. And if you're on a video and you're not teleprompting a script someone else wrote for you, but just talking about the things that you think matter, reiterating the values, etc., then you're miles above anyone else. Not anyone else, but most businesses, because that's where usually they fail. That the CEO is confident enough in their own voice and their own tonality and have had the feedback, the training, the coaching to actually do it and stand in front of a camera and say, this is what, this is where we're heading. This is why we're doing it. And this is what we need to do this month to make it happen. And this is why it benefits all of us. It's relatively simple once you get the hang of it. But, the camera makes a lot of leaders shy, even though it shouldn't. So it's the how you do it. And you said the authenticity, your tonality, that builds a lot of trust. There are studies now that examine what happens if leaders use ChatGPT generated emails, etc. And ChatGPT has a voice, right? There's a certain tonality to it that most people recognize, and that diminishes trust in the leadership because they can't even bother to send an email. So there's no good data that we have that confirms this. So I'm telling people, look, ChatGPT, wonderful. I use it like a gangster, but be mindful for what formats, for what occasion you use it. Don't use it with your team. Don't use it with your family. Use it as a customer service bot and lots of use cases in between, but be super mindful. Otherwise you break brand and you break trust.
That's really interesting. I feel what I feel I sacrifice sometimes is smoothness and polish. And sometimes people will email me and go like, "You got this thing wrong," or there's a, simple as there's a typo here, or you've said something that whatever. And but for me, yeah, those things are worth sacrificing for people just feeling comfortable that I did actually think it or write it. And I fully agree on ChatGPT. I would say in book publishing as well, there's a lot of very smart people in the business. There's a lot of people. It's all about communication. It's all about words. So I think you have to be almost particularly attuned to it. I'm sure maybe it's the case in every business, but this is a business of very language conscious people. So you have to be, I think, particularly conscious.
I can imagine. And I think you're right. There is a trade-off sometimes. If I read from a teleprompter, I probably make fewer mistakes. But people see I'm reading, and I don't really want to watch people reading. I want to listen to someone with something to say. So I agree, the trade-off is real, but you're making the right trade-off, in my view. There's also a question about balancing transparency and confidentiality, right? In the big business, you can't share everything, yet you've elected to share, for instance, salary transparency and various other aspects of the business. So how do you balance this? The transparency bit, which builds trust, versus the need for, business confidentiality?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, what sometimes happens is there's some fallout. So I would say sometimes we share something that maybe other businesses wouldn't share. And then you get, I guess, particularly online, you get a bit of fallout, you get some of that information being leaked. And that's never great. And it's never very pleasant. But for me, it always feels a worthwhile trade-off. I suppose I'd always rather trade the relationship with people internally for some potential external fallout. I think the bits, obviously we've got very clear lines in terms of we're a publicly listed company. There are some bits of information that I know just we can't share, but what I hope I can do is be very transparent with people about the things we can't share. And we had some structural changes last year, and I had to did do a bit of thing about like, these are the reasons why there are elements we can't share with you. There are some, they're almost being transparent about why you can't be transparent about certain things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, in a former life, I was chief spokesman of a publicly listed company in London, EasyJet, and we were in the same shoes, right? So I sometimes see, we can't really say a lot because we're listed. And fortunately, neither EasyJet nor you say this. We say we know exactly what we can say, but we also know where the boundaries are. We can say we can't disclose this right now. I can share this with you on the 18th when we released our results for the quarter, but I'm afraid not now. So the thing is, sometimes a cop-out communicators and leaders use to say, we can't be listed, but in effect, a lot of things you can share and you should share because it's a better story and consumers and employees want to know, and this is how we build trust.
I think for me as well, I think when you work in a creative industry, and I'd be interested if it's the same in other industries, for a lot of people it's a vocation, and there's something very meaningful about it. And the thing that again, if I have one mission, it's really to bring together that and the commercial as well, and say, this is what we do. We're both, like, we are this, I hope, amazing cultural entity, and we're doing this incredible thing. And we're also this incredibly successful business, part of this incredibly successful sector. And we should be proud of that. And I think again, some of the history of our industries, there's been a lot of sort of like, I guess, money people at the top, probably mostly men. And then, people who are in it for the vocation working. And I really want to try and bring those things together, because I've always seen it kind of holistically. As publishing is a wonderful vocational thing that I jump out of bed in the morning, literally, and feel, grateful to be in this industry. And at the same time, I'm very proud of what a great business and industry it is. So again, that's a key part of communication that doesn't always land well with everyone, because some people actually are much more one way or the other.
Yes.
But for me, it's always together.
It makes total sense to me. And I wonder how you see the future of the industry, which you love and you're clearly very passionate about. A few years ago, it was all doom and gloom, but the industry seems to have turned a corner as we still read books, we still love books. And if I'm not mistaken, it's even growing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, from the outside, I have friends say to me this all the time, like, oh goodness, is the book industry in trouble, or are you threatened by ebooks or whatever? The truth of it is, book publishing, actually, revenues, we've never done that thing that a lot of our creative industries, think about the music industry, had a dramatic fall and then sort of rise again. If you look at film and TV, that's had falls and rises. Book publishing has been amazingly consistently growing. So we've never, as an industry, we've never fallen. Like, we've always kept on gently growing. And I would say we've weathered various storms incredibly well. I think we've been a lot more nimble as an industry than people might know. So the ebook revolution, we made sure that our authors and ourselves, that we benefited from that. Audio, move to downloadable audio, benefited from that. Changes in the retail landscape, like that. We've weathered all these sorts of storms. I think we've continued to make books that are really attractive to consumers. There've been threats, and right now, when you've touched on AI, kind of, there are so many threats all the time. There's a threat at the moment because, studies are showing people are reading less than they used to. Like, consistently, this is being shown. Kids are, adults are. And in one way that concerns me, and it would be wrong for it not to concern me. But at the same time, I feel like we've always met people where they are. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I mentioned audio right now. We're seeing a boom in audio books, audio listening.
Yeah.
And I think, looking for the future, I think we've increasingly been a sort of environment that's not just about physical books, about ebooks, about audio. But I think audio is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And also, we're a business at Hachette now, like, coming up 6-7% of our revenue now is from non-books. So We publish stationery, notebooks, gifts, novelties, post-it notes, all sorts of things. And I think that those jigsaws, those categories are in growth. So I think if it, kind of look into the future, what am I really excited about? I think seeing a lot of growth coming from these ancillary areas, and from audio. And also I think people now, we're seeing market research show that younger people value books in a way that maybe our generation don't. We've seen them as utility objects. Younger people now are seeing them as like these like incredible bits of heritage or memorabilia or whatever kind of. And I think we are catering to that with more and more beautiful books. So I would say fast forward 5-10 years, I hope we'll see a world with more audio books, more ancillary products, more beautiful luxury books.
Yeah. Interesting. And I mean, I love books. I have my own library. I sometimes help CEOs and other leaders, conceptually think through their books and help them on the way. Do you think it's a good idea for business leaders, thought leaders to publish books?
I'm going to choose my words very carefully. I think another thing that always surprises people is just how many people we have submitting books. So the success rate of actually getting a book published versus somebody, it's quite people are often surprised actually how few.
What's the success rate then? Worse than Harvard, or?
It's probably. I mean, in all honesty, I don't know if there's been a scientific study, but I mean, certainly when we used to get unsolicited submissions when I started in the business 30 years ago, it was probably about 1 or 2 in 1,000
Right.
was the success rate. So that's probably, now a lot goes through literary agents, things are managed in a different way, but probably in terms of actually being published by a major publisher, 1 or 2 in 1,000 is still probably roughly accurate.
So it's a long shot. Even if I have the idea, desire, the experience, it's a long shot.
It's a long shot. What I would say is that in the business books category, as a guest we're speaking about, I think it's a very vibrant category. It's a category that's increasingly international. So we're seeing incredible sales in India, the Far East, continental Europe, kind of across the world, really. And we're seeing huge sales actually where someone has a truly original idea that can help people. So I would say if you feel evangelical about something, you feel you've got an idea that is truly new, that can truly help people, then it's well worth you trying to publish a book, because there's a chance that your book could actually help people and it could be very successful. Where I would advise people against it. So some people, business leaders, have said to me, well, I want something as a kind of legacy, or but I don't know exactly what I want to say. I would say just don't, because I think for any publication to be successful, I think the author, whatever genre it is, needs to have such a crystal clear vision of what it is they want to communicate. They need to have, they need to be passionate and evangelical about bringing that into the world. If you're not, then the likelihood is that unless you've got this incredible platform, someone like whoever, Elon Musk could probably publish a book on, and people just want, his platform's incredible. Some people want to hear what he has to say. But yeah, if you're anyone else, then I think you need to have a really clear vision.
And what I see is people have that vision and that obsession almost with the topic and have a lot to contribute, but also have built a big audience. That seems to be, at the moment at least, a killer combination, right? If I have a newsletter list of 100,000, 500,000, those are committed readers. They know my reading, they know my style. Probably many of them will buy a book from me.
Yeah, definitely platform's important. There are also some examples of people who don't have the most brilliant platform, don't have a huge platform, but just have a really stunning idea. So, I mean, the best case scenario is a stunning idea and a platform. But I would say as book publishers, we can work with people to help build their platforms. And we've got lots and lots of success stories, I would say, of people who have fairly minimal platforms, but a great idea. And we've helped them to use that great idea to sell lots of books, and then that grows their platform. So it can be a sort of
virtuous
circle. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I hope that the book publishing industry continues to develop, and we will continue to enjoy the products you put out. And I do think it's very interesting because your industry also, had to adapt to the disruption through Amazon, through AI, and many other phases of disruption. Booksellers maybe not in the most healthy state, lots of independence go away, etc. But you always find these ways to adapt and still understand very well what consumers are looking for, because I think books are just such a wonderful gateway and window into other people's lives, into other emotional states, into sometimes escapism, sometimes the growth mindset, which obviously as an idea was popularized by a fantastic book. So many good things coming out of the book publishing industry and the products you put out.
Oh, well, that's very nice to hear, and I'm glad you're a sort of fan of our products. I mean, I kind of think of it a bit like, the tortoise and the hare. I think we're the sort of tortoise of the creative industries, in that we've never been that big or splashy or anything like that, but quietly, I'd say we've weathered all these storms. We've kept on growing, and we've kept on remaining incredibly relevant. And I always think that actually when we get sued by a politician, or there's a big story in the news. I know there's a big book in the UK, have you seen, about Prince Andrew, and like books still are things that change the story, that make headlines, that really last for a long time. So yeah, I feel very evangelical about it.
Yeah. Awesome. But also, I don't know, it's good publicity, but it's certainly publicity for the book. And sometimes people are, they just shouldn't sue the author or the publisher, because it just creates more waves around the whatever's in the book.
I mean, for me, it's like books are consistently on the front pages of newspapers. Books are consistently causing waves on social media, and there are not many things in the world that can so do that.
Yeah.
And books obviously get made into movies, books, inspirations for songs, like books kind of, if you drill back, books are at the heart of an awful lot of what we encounter as human beings.
Yes, exactly. And it's also interesting, there's some symbiosis maybe, or just collaboration between podcasters and authors. So a lot of people who come on the podcast have written and say, hey, I want to talk about my book and I like the book, so cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
That we overlap in terms of audience and interests, etc.
Absolutely.
So circling back to your leadership style and internal communications, what's the next thing you want to do? Or do you say, my communication system, the messaging, the storytelling, all of that works, it's just, execution? Or is there something you want to still do or change?
A lot of people come into book publishing, and I did as well, because I love books and I'm very passionate about it. People don't necessarily come in because they're really numerate, or they really understand the way the business world works. But my experience has been, the more numerate I've become, the more I've understood the business world, the more fulfilled I've been in my job, and frankly as well, the more I've been able to succeed in it and achieve great results for the company and for myself. So my real, in terms of where my head's at, my real mission is like, how can we give people as much kind of information about the business as possible, so that they really, as well as being super literate, that they can become much more numerate as well, and that those two things can work in harmony and in combination. I've actually had a really great experience, a really brilliant business leader here. Her name's Susan Weinberg. She was a publisher, a very esteemed publisher. She was retiring, and she and I agreed she'd stay on for a year to teach, basically. So this year, Susan is teaching one-on-ones, small groups, large groups, teaching the business to people, going through P&Ls, explaining how things work, explaining what the levers are. And it's been absolutely brilliant. The feedback I've had from lots of people has been amazing. And that, to me, has made me more hungry. I think it's a win-win. Like, if we can be the publishing business where people really know the business, then that will benefit us, and it will also benefit everyone who works for us, because whether they go on to work for us or someone else, I think it will give them amazing skills. And actually, the good thing is the publishing business is not that difficult. For most people, the mechanics are not that difficult. A publishing P&L is relatively simple. So that is the next stage. That's the next stage of communication.
It's such a great idea to not let that esteemed person leave the building, but say, hey, stay on for a year, but just pass on what you've learned over a long esteemed career. That is such a brilliant move. I wish more companies would adhere to that. So that's awesome. This is always my last question. What's your best piece of communications advice?
My best piece of communications advice is it's probably quite a boring one, but just like really be yourself. I think it's very easy in a leadership role for the mask to become the face. As I said earlier, people are blowing smoke. You as a leader are often under an enormous amount of pressure, which can affect how you are as well. For me, I try wherever possible just to remember who I am, which again sounds like a simple piece of advice, but I think in a sort of C-suite context, it's harder than you think. So I would say to anyone in any sort of leadership managerial role, kind of really try to remember who you are, like even being simplistic about it, remembering who you were at school when you were at college, like remember who that person was. And when
it sounds like where you came from,
try and communicate in that way. Don't try to, and I think it's human nature often to be like, I've seen that other guy who was my boss who was wearing a suit and was doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to try and I once worked with a coach who said one of his pieces of advice to people was wear the suit, and I thought I really, really hate that piece of advice because I never literally or figuratively want to wear a suit. So
dress for the job you want to have.
So no, I really hated that piece of advice. So I think almost like the opposite. And maybe you are someone who feels. I've got a colleague who feels really comfortable in a suit, who loves wearing a suit, and who loves. So it's like, do that then. But I think my one piece is like, really don't be afraid to be yourself, because that will be your super strength.
Yes, I love that. And it's interesting what you say about the coach and the advice, which seems a bit outdated. A good CEO can distinguish between good and bad advice, right? That seems to be a very important leadership quality, to distinguish between, does this fit my style, or is this just someone else's recipe for success?
Yeah, and I think it's knowing. I mean, again, it's a big piece of it's a bit of a CEO knowing when to listen and when not to listen, right? Like when to listen to the internal thing. That I'm a big believer in intuition, when to listen to that and when to listen to the outside, and how to take stuff in, but like, how does it resonate here?
Yeah. And that judgment is so important. I think especially in the age of AI, because AI will do a lot of the, what used to be called hard skills. AI will take over a lot, but judgment, I think, is going to be even more important as a leadership quality going forward. 100%.
And I think also, again, from a leadership perspective, like trying wherever possible to take ego out of it. Like ego and pride, I think, and I say this for myself as anyone, like we're all prone to it, and particularly in leadership roles. Yeah. Ego and pride that can cloud your judgment. The best judgments I feel I've made are ones where I've tried to take away my own ego from, which is hard. And some of the worst judgments I've made are ones that I can see in retrospect were more driven by ego or pride.
Yeah, it's such good advice. And note to self. David, this was awesome. I could talk to you for hours. Really appreciate everything you're doing, your colleagues are doing, the books you put out. Much appreciated. So I appreciate
Likewise. Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.